ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to just make just two or three simple points. One observation from my own country's experience starting on this path, and then also, as you might expect, I want to say something about gasification and how that might help the situation a little bit. It was about 15 years ago in the UK that this sort of process of embarking on new reduced carbon started. It started with the government placing obligations on the fuel prices and collecting a certain amount of money from that, and then use that to support a number of projects of its own making rather than of the utilities. And those projects were largely in the area of wind, because the UK, as you might guess, has got more wind than solar, and then a very big offshore wind program, which has now been successful. We've now passed one milestone, which was a day in last year when the whole of the country was supplied by renewable energy. So there was some progress there. And as part of our membership of Europe, such as it is, Europe has also been passing milestones in terms of its amount of renewables it has, as far as its generation is concerned. So we are seeing some progress in the developed countries, but it's taken this large amount of time, and it's taken a very large amount of money, which is, of course, when you take it away from the consumers, they will put up with it for so long, and then they'll vote you out of office if you're not careful, and that's about what happened in the UK. And so there is a little bit of backtracking on using the obligations the renewable obligation to collect funds for some of these projects. So that's where we were, and it's good to hear that you are talking about finance here, which is obviously the key to it. And I always think the governments don't have any money at all. It's your money or our money, and they have to put it in the best way. So we've talked. My understanding here, I feel quite humble to come here and hear how the ambitious program that India is setting itself to meet this obligations it's set in its statements around COP21 and COP22, that it is going to take a serious attempt to reduce its carbon energy and do it in a very short timescale. It sounds like, to me, even shorter than it's been done in the West. So you are clearly stuck with your fossil fuels, your coal largely. Though I should say that all British power was produced by coal up to about, virtually all coal anyway, up to about 1990 or so, because we didn't use gas at all for it. And there's been the reductions have really come from switching from coal to gas. That's where the major ones have come from, apart from what's been contributed by renewables. And as you build up your renewables, you build up your problems in the grid system, and the problems have started to occur in terms of not having enough power on non-windy days, and that's been then addressed by keeping some of the old coal plant, not just allowing it to fire on its own accord, but actually have it as a capacity spinning when these things are needed. And the finances of the power demand has been ranged around keeping these old coal-fired plants. They won't be doing more than a few hundred hours a year, just to keep the balance against the building renewables. And I think we're at a point now where renewables are starting to bite in, and I was staring at a gap. We used to have about a 15% surplus of power. I think this year, in the cold days, it was about 2%. So things can get very, very tight indeed. Now, I'll just turn on, so it does look, I'm seeing coal here as the long-term solution alongside what you can do in renewables, and I say you've got this program to do it. But once you've got your coal, then the options, therefore, then are really to find more efficient ways of using it, and that takes you, as we've heard in this conference, to supercritical and ultracritical power generation. And when we look at the alternatives to that, then I'll just come to gasification now. I think one of our chairmen I was speaking at said that gasification is too expensive. It just doesn't compete against these conventional processes. But remember that gasification gives you some bigger options. It gives you the option of a value added to the coal. That means that not only can you produce power, but you can also produce some products which help to lower the production cost of the power. And those products are those that you would have to supply in other ways by natural gas into producing the hydrogen, producing the other chemicals that you need. And there seems to be a route through gasification to reduce those costs by taking advantage of the wide possibilities that the syngas can offer. I've suggested that that is the way you might be able to absorb the greater costs, if they are, of gasification. And then you've got this wild card that I've been pushing for a few years, which is underground coal gasification. Clearly, that's a way of getting the cost down in terms of gasification. And if we can get a truly commercial project operating at scale with underground coal gasification, we're going to see a much reduced cost for the energy and the syngas that it can produce. But we're not there yet, and I wouldn't like to get anyone to think that you can just go away today with a bit of advice and build this plant. It's got to be done step by step. I tried to explain this morning how the South Africans did it in a very logical way, and I think that has to be done in the fullness of time. That 10 years program perhaps to get to your first really commercial stage in the right sort of coal. And that coal, I believe, has to be deep coal and in good structure as well. So I think that's an option that you already got, and it's one that I would support that you pursue. Alongside renewables, and I'm looking at the younger people, as other speakers have done, because not some of us are not so young on the panel here, speaking to myself, of course. But the energy options are really exciting in terms of what is ahead in terms of development. I just mentioned UCG, but the need that renewables and these new configurations in grids throw up in terms of smart metering, in terms of storage, in terms of use of batteries, these are fantastic developments which our young people, say, and a lot of overseas graduates and students are involved in it as well, are developing, and these are some of the best things, I think, that you can do in the energy field. So I would encourage people to work in these fields and to produce some success. The other one I've mentioned in that list will be biofuels, which are certainly biogasification is looking very promising at the moment. So with those few thoughts, I don't tend to be an expert in finance or even, it's certainly what India should do, but I can see that there's some observations here from our experience, and I would certainly suggest that you look closely at all the options for gasification. Thank you very much.